We've been traveling a lot in the last few years. I mean, not all the time, but a lot. At the request of my teacher, Swami Kriyananda, whose tiny little picture is here. And all of us are representing he and us, representing Yogananda's teachings. So everything I share with you is, I'm not making it up. It's ancient. And I met Swami Kriyananda when I was 22 in 1969. I live in Palo Alto, California, and in 1969 I also lived in Palo Alto, California. I seem to be on a very short leash with that part of the country. And Swami Kriyananda came to give a talk at Stanford University. It was 1969. It was when the whole Bay Area was just exploding with, let's take down all the way things have been done before and let's reinvent them. And there was this huge wave of interest in Eastern teachings. And a fraternity at Stanford just thought it would be cool to have a Swami come and speak. They were a fraternity extremely well known for their parties. In fact, they were so committed to their parties that they had a huge party tent behind their house because it wasn't big enough for them to do all that they wanted to do. So inside that party tent, the Swami Kriyananda came to speak. And I was with a group of people who were interested in hearing him, but they wanted to hear him from the last row. So I was in the last row. It wasn't, the tent was maybe twice the size as this room. It wasn't stunningly huge, but it was large enough. I was already extremely interested in Eastern teachings and was very deep in it, but I could not make the bridge between having a profound philosophical interest and an actual life. I just couldn't figure out how to do it. I didn't want to be a Catholic nun. I thought my Jewish parents would be very upset if I did that. And I wanted to do something exciting, but I couldn't be a Protestant missionary either because I didn't have the right qualifications for that. And I was way, way too cowardly to go to India. It was just way out of the question. And so I was just stuck. I was really stuck on a cosmic level stuck. And when, you reach the end of your rope, Divine Mother sends you something completely new. So Swami Kriyananda walked into the room and he personified what looked to me like how human beings ought to exist in this world. And I just made a decision in about 30 seconds before he spoke a word that this was what I was looking for. And it took me about a year, so I was 23 before I got to be living in the Ananda community. Never looked back. So I've had a very interesting and not a sheltered life, but it's always been in the context of this. And now that I'm of a more advanced age, we'll just leave it at that point. But, at this stage of my life, I think, wow, we really did it. We did a whole incarnation and this is all we did. Good for us. But in more recent years, well, not actually always from the beginning. I was always on the front line, so to speak, which is having the opportunity to talk to people who were, for the most part, learning about what I knew. And that's what I've done all along, and also now writing. And a dozen years ago, Swami Kriyananda said, travel as much as you can. It was the last year of his life. It took me a while to get organized to do that. So now we've been all over the world. Some of you have heard me say this, but we actually just did the math recently. I just became curious. My Virgo travel companions keep track. I just say, where are we? What are we doing? Nice people. Do I have to be translated? Yeah, I don't speak Japanese. Okay. I'm not that dumb, but I have the incredible luxury of being like that. But we've been to 50 cities in 23 countries in about the last 3 or 4 years. And that's relevant to what we're going to talk about tonight, because I've gotten a very interesting view of the world that I didn't have before. I was reading the description of what we were going to talk about tonight, and it's hardly a cheerful talk. Come out, let's celebrate the end of the world, which is coming soon. Yeah, here we are, good time. And unfortunately, it's a kind of chaotic reality that we're having to face. I have to start with saying, when Paramhansa Yogananda was in the body and presenting himself, he spoke consistently about the fact that we were entering into a very tumultuous time on this planet. Simultaneously, in Autobiography of a Yogi, and also in the book The Holy Science by his guru Sri Yukteswar, there's this whole description of ascending and descending ages of awareness on this planet, which is a phenomenon on other planets also. And also, because I know a number of you are of Indian heritage in this room, a correction of a misunderstanding about where we are in that cycle. Because there is a tradition in India that we are in the worst, the lowest of the four ages, which is Kali Yuga, which Kali means dark, but also it's the age of matter, in which the world is perceived as a material phenomenon with no other subtle levels. The Indian tradition in many places right now is that we are in Kali Yuga and will be for the next 400,000 years, which, is kind of grim. But none of us are going to live for 400,000 years, so really what difference does it make? Because we're going to just be here for whatever it is. But Sri Yukteswar literally corrected that and said that, in fact, the nadir of Kali Yuga was 500 AD, and that from that point we've been in an ascending cycle. This entire cycle is 24,000 years, so it's a little bit longer than any of us can testify from our own direct experience. And it ascends for 12,000 years, it peaks, and then it descends in reverse order. So you have an ascending highest age, and then you have a descending highest age. We are in the second age, which is called Dwapara, which means, guess what? Second, okay? But the quality of the age of Dwapara is energy. The age of Kali is matter, the age of Dwapara is energy. This transition into the age of energy began in 1700. This is as Sri Yukteswar and Yogananda say it. Began in 1700, and the actual turning point was 1900. So if you think in terms of energy transforming our experience of this planet, and you start in 1900, when they even brought in the automobile, and you all would know this without thinking about the implications. Here's an automobile, and they're trying to explain how powerful this is. So they describe it in terms of horsepower. Okay, why would they say horsepower? Because no one knew what a machine could do, but they all knew what a horse could do. So this machine is the equivalent of 12 horses. It's 12 horsepower engine. And I don't know if they still call things by horsepower, but does anyone in this room, well, I am in Texas, maybe I can't ask this question. How many of you in this room could measure an engine in terms of the horses that you have and that you know? It's like it's completely gone. And it's gone not a little more than the length of an average lifespan, but not by much. And in all the years before that, none of this ever came to pass. So we are in multiple realities, all simultaneously, causing all kinds of interesting, let's call it interesting, that famous Chinese curse. The Chinese curse is, may you live in interesting times. I recently learned that is the third in awfulness of the curses. So the third worst curse is, may you live in interesting times. The second worst is, may you get everything you want. And the worst is, may you come to the attention of the authorities. I don't know if someone made that up. It doesn't matter. It's so terrific. Just like it all depends on your point of view, right? Okay, but we're at a time where we are in a very, very turbulent transition because things are expanding and going into a state of greater enlightenment. But the drama, the actual drama of creation is not that the planet suddenly gets really good or perfect or anything like that, nor, and I know I'm contradicting what other people say, but I'm speaking on behalf of these masters, it's not like humanity evolves. It's not like, well, I'm a human, humanity is going to evolve, I'll sit here and evolve. There's no free ride anywhere, period, zero. It is entirely, the entire drama is individual, the individual progress from delusion to enlightenment. And that is an individual journey that each of us has to make, and each of us has to face every single issue that is holding us back, everything that we're afraid of, everything that's unresolved. And it takes us more than one lifetime. Divine truth is kind to us. You're not expected to just come out of the womb and sprint to the grave and get it all settled. And if not, then, well, we used to know that we would either go to heaven or hell. We used to be told that. But it isn't. You just try again. You pick up where you left off. We're just, this is a little children, when they reach a certain stage of being able to read. I remember the concept of a chapter book. First when you read from front cover to back cover, it's just one little story. But then you get so smart and big that you can not only wash your own hands and turn on the water, but you can also read chapter books where the story takes a little time. Well, we are a chapter book. And each one of our adventures is a chapter, and we finish that. And often in stories, the chapter will end usually with a cliffhanger, and then the next chapter will start like somewhere else. And then it's not until way into it that we go back and we pick up what was going on here. It's a very clear story of what we're doing here. And every incarnation that we choose is metaphysically, what's the right word? It's exactly what it needs to be. Not because there's some force, some angel, distributing it, or that we have to please God in certain ways by belonging to the right religion or paying the priests or whatever it is, following the rules. It's nothing like that. This is metaphysics. And nowadays, physics and metaphysics are getting kind of close together because the physicists are looking from the outside, and as we advance, the planet becomes more enlightened. Human consciousness perceives realities that were always there, but we didn't have the subtlety to know them. All the inventions, all the things that happen, the potential for those things to happen were always there, but there wasn't a collective, it wasn't appropriate for the stage of the planet. But now the physicists are beginning to say what the metaphysicians have said all this time, that this is an energy universe. We think it's a physical universe, but it's an energy universe, and what's always happening is that energy is magnetically relating to itself. If energy makes a movement, that movement creates magnetism, that magnetism attracts or repels, depending on its vibration. We merge with some, we are dissonant with others, but it's always energy. And we, living in these physical bodies, there's an animating energy force. And the metaphysics of that is the chakras. And the chakras are a spectrum from complete commitment to matter as the only reality to an awakening to understand that even energy is just a manifestation of consciousness, and consciousness is a manifestation of spirit. And this is what we move through. That we think that we're just a body and we live and we die, and then we realize that we're a personality, we're a field of energy, then we understand more and more subtly. And that all of those potentials are within us all the time. And because energy doesn't go anywhere, it just keeps mutating. And because we identify with our individuality and we define ourselves by, I am the one doing this, it's always been, even from a very young age, it was so puzzling to me that I was always myself. And there weren't a lot of people around me who found that as odd as I found it. I would go to sleep at night, I would forget for a while, but when I woke up, there I was again. And even to this day, when I woke up this morning, there I was. Don't you think that's odd? But that is part of the great event of this planet, And the entire process of spirituality, spiritual growth from delusion to enlightenment, is a constant redefinition of that I that's always there. What is it really? Is this personality and this body and this name and this set of parents and this wonderful, thank you, God, gifted incarnation I have had? If you were going to say me, is that all there is? Well, because of these wonderful masters in my life, I know that's not true. I'm just a window through which energy flows. And sometimes I think I'm the window frame. And sometimes I know that I'm the energy that comes through it. And progress is more and more to forget the frame and just be the energy that's flowing through it. And every time you do anything, you have a thought, you have an action, a feeling, anything at all, it's an affirmation of our understanding from complete delusion to full enlightenment. What is real? What am I affirming? When somebody does something to you and you feel obligated to have your feelings hurt and be angry at them, and that you think somehow that that's the right response, it seems like a good idea, that's what I'm going to do, it affirms a certain level on that spectrum, and the degree of energy that you put into it registers in your chakras. It's not just registering, it settles into your chakras. So for those who can see, and I'm not one of those, but people have that expanded sight, they can see the pattern. They can see exactly who you are, because who you are, who I am, is this collection of actions and decisions and affirmations and commitments of energy that gives us this field, our aura, our field around us. And that's why you meet certain people, and you if you're at all sensitive, you can feel something. And some are bright and beautiful, and others are dull and not interesting, and sometimes they're creepy. They're still a child of God, but they're a creepy child of God. It's just a fact. Because all the decisions they've made have made a certain vibration. And then those vibrations have magnetism. And that's what karma is. Karma is the vibrations of energy that cause your life to happen. Because this is not a random thing. This is all the scientists are telling us these days. This is a very purposeful, interrelated, integrated, inescapable reality. And karma is simply an unlearned lesson, something I don't know, because eventually we've got to scoot all the way up the spectrum, and we are compelled. We are compelled. There's lots of ways to say the same thing. I'm very comfortable with the idea of God. I think of God as Divine Mother because I would like to have a nice God paying attention to me. I would like to have a compassionate, kind, sympathetic mother. I prefer that. And so that it expresses it clearly to me. But in any case, we are compelled because we know we were made for happiness. Think about that for a minute. What motivates us all the time is that we know that I have not reached the fulfillment of happiness that is my true nature and my true destiny. Yogananda, when he came to America from India in 1920, brought with him this little book. He called it The Science of Religion. It was actually, he actually had a ghostwriter for that book because he didn't yet speak English that well. So Swami Kriyananda rewrote the book later. Yogananda called it The Science of Religion. For various legal reasons, Swami couldn't call it The Science of Religion, so he called it God is for Everyone. But it had an extremely simple premise. Every single thing that anybody ever does, any sentient being who has enough capacity to make a decision, which goes as low as a snail or a worm, makes decisions according to what they think will give them happiness and cause them to avoid suffering. If you poke a worm with a pin, the worm will try to get away from the pin because it knows that it was born for happiness and it doesn't want to suffer. And if you think about your life, it's really very interesting. You'll realize that if there was no possibility of happiness, we would be very content to suffer. Now, of course, people have very distorted ideas of what makes them happy. And that is the learning process, because we have the opportunity to choose. We're made by God to be able to choose, and we're made conscious enough to be able to evaluate. I mean, a worm can't really reason it out, but it gets that this sharp, shiny thing is unpleasant, and when it comes at it, it shrinks away. And on, very low levels of awareness, creatures can be taught to go for the food and not for the electric shock. And truthfully, we're not all that different. We're just much more sophisticated about how we describe it. But we're really trying to avoid the electric shock and go to that which we find is pleasurable. And karma is simply something we don't yet understand about what actually gives us happiness and what actually causes us suffering. And all the confusion that you see around in the world is other, sometimes creepy children of Divine Mother who think that if I behave this way, I will be happier than if I behave that way. Even when you look, it's self-evident to you, perhaps, that this is not a happiness-producing direction. But Yogananda says something very startling. He says, anything that you're not inclined to do now is because in a past life you did it, and you discovered that it didn't work. In the late 60s, early 70s, I was in San Francisco. There was a hippie guru there, wonderful man, really, named Stephen Gaskin. Some of you are old enough to remember. He was a wild man, but he was a real sweetheart. And he took a caravan of buses, and they ended up in Tennessee, and they made a big commune there, which still exists, but it's changed in a lot of ways. One of his wonderful ideas was group marriage. He thought the problem was, these exclusive relationships were not a good idea. So groups of people settled in big houses, and they would all have these marriage things. And a few years later, he was at this program in San Francisco, and someone said, I understand that you've abandoned the idea of group marriage. Why have you abandoned it? And he was very folksy in his way, and he said, it don't work. And that's about it, isn't it? It don't work. But if you really know it don't work, and that means it doesn't ease suffering and it doesn't bring happiness, then you don't keep doing it. But all the things that you keep doing, that your friends know are completely nuts, you keep doing it because you don't know that it don't work. And then you find out by experience. So many parts of this that we have to understand is that everyone is equally loved by God. Everyone will ultimately move from complete ignorance to enlightenment. But in the meantime, Divine Mother has set up all these big gymnasiums where we get to incarnate and we get to practice. We're always just practicing. We're getting to try out what works and what don't work. And at a time like this, which is when we are transitioning from an age of matter to an age of energy, a whole lot of stuff gets to be destroyed. And it's a time of great conflict because the future is imposing itself on the past, but the past hasn't quite given up. So even though we have fully entered Dwapara Yuga, and here's another reason, and this is the most important hope-giving reason of the whole story. Everything that we observe is created from three levels, and this is basic metaphysics, three levels: the causal, the astral, and the material. The causal world, and we think, because the material is the one we live in, and it's real big, the material world. I mean, Austin is real big, what to speak of Texas, it's real big. And all of this is so huge, and we fly hours and hours to go to South Africa, and all of this. So it looks more powerful to us than the subtle realms that we can't see with our eyes. But the real power is subtle power. I mean, we can even just see this exactly. Horsepower is much less than the jet engine or the whatever, the internet, all the things. I'm not the one who can really speak with any intelligence about this, but you understand. These subtle forms of any nuclear power. You know, the nuclear bombs, which can do a great deal of damage, they're used badly, but it's really just concentrated energy. They're pretty darn small because the energy is more subtle. So the same is true that the causal, which is thought, ideas, is much more powerful, the first force. The second is if we add energy. Everything's created first with an idea, then energy is added to that idea, and finally it manifests. And one of the great things we have to learn as human beings, because we can have lots of great ideas, and we imagine if I just have a good idea, it's going to happen. But it manifests when you put energy into it. I've been part of creating a number of things in the context of Ananda, and I have an understanding of, well, it's a good idea. We have a school in our community in Palo Alto. And I remember when we were trying to persuade parents to enroll their children in our school, but the school wouldn't exist unless they enrolled their children. And parents are kind of protective of their kids, you know what I mean? So to have them give them to us for something that didn't exist, that was a little hard for them to get. But fortunately, there are a lot of entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley where I live. And we won a couple of families by just frankly saying, of course it doesn't exist. We're going to create it. Yeah, you're my kind of people. So we were able to pull it off. We'd been there for some 30 years, so now it really is there. But you have an idea, you have to put energy into it. And believe me, it took a lot of energy to make that one happen. This was before cell phones and all of that sort of thing, whatever the year was, 35 years ago. The phone for that school was on my kitchen counter for 7 years. And every time that phone would ring, whatever else was going on, hello, this is Asha, Ananda School. How can I help you? And I'd be saying quiet to the people around me, What did they know? I was there. And we really did have a school. It's just that we didn't have a school office or a school secretary. But when you put energy into it, it happens. And I've had lots of ideas that I haven't put enough energy into, or the right kind of energy, and nothing ever comes of it. Okay, so by the time it manifests, anything manifests, there's a whole lot of energy that's already had to be applied to it, or else it wouldn't be there. But the physical manifestation is the last. Okay, so here, where we are now, is that literally on a causal and astral realm, because we as human beings are just some of the sentient beings who are involved in all of this. The masters in the Himalayas are working for the salvation of the world. Here's an interesting thing, just for fun. Yogananda said that he put the thought into the mind of Harry Truman, the President of the United States, to go defend against the incursion of the communists in Korea. He just made that as a statement. I believe that he spoke the truth at all times. Because he felt that if the communist regime had gone there, it would have, and my geography is so poor, but it would have swept all the way around, even around up into Alaska, and would have come into this continent. He felt it was an atheistic religion system that had to be stopped. So he put that thought into it. He also said that Hitler, who was a brilliant tactician, opened the war on two fronts. He opened a war in Russia. Master also said that the rishis in the Himalayas put that idea into Hitler's mind because he had to be defeated because he was darkness. But they have to use the inclinations of the person. They don't interfere. But Hitler thought he was invincible. He thought he could do anything that he set his mind to. He'd been so powerful. So by influencing him through his own weakness, they persuaded him to do something that allowed him to be defeated. These are two fascinating examples, and there's countless others in which this world is being guided in ways that we don't know. We're not being interfered with, but we're being guided. And where do you think your ideas come from? In Autobiography of a Yogi, Yogananda says, ideas are not individually created. They're universal. We merely tune into them. So how does it happen that all of a sudden some genius inventor gets this idea that to do something? How does it happen that any one of us just gets this idea to do something? It's because our vibration on this spectrum has come to the point where we can perceive realities that we weren't able to perceive. It's all about attunement, it's all about energy, it's all about vibrations. So we're now at a time where the masters are moving this planet, toward a higher understanding. And because this transition is so turbulent, both the war of the Ramayana war, that was in a transition from, let's see, what it would have been, Treta going into Dwapara, right? And the war of the Bhagavad Gita was Dwapara going into Kali, but coming down. And both of those, they're now, great epics, but they have historical basis because it was a turbulent transition and the whole world went to war, which Yogananda says we're going to do again. Okay, so this is the way I think about it, and I've tried to find ways to be a little more cheerful and not so depressed. This is a time when Divine Mother lets her rowdy children come and wreck things, because they need to find out whether wrecking things is going to make them happy. Oh, I have a nuclear bomb. Boom, I'm going to shoot it off. How is that going to work out for me? What's the karma of that going to be for me? Why did that make me happy? And so we are, and simultaneously, a lot of us, all of us, and more, because I've met them all over the planet, we're Divine Mother's more obedient children. And she also sent us because we're the future. And we have these new ideas, and we're putting energy into these new ideas, and they will manifest after these guys are finished. The way Swami Kriyananda put it once, he said, after they're done just sort of blowing it up and destroying a lot of things, right? Those few who are left are going, and because at that point, it'll be our turn. And we'll be ready for it. My belief from being in 23 countries in the last few years, it will take us about 5 minutes to get organized. Because what is there to organize? We're all in this together, friends. Let's cooperate. I'm a little hungry. I have 4 apples and you don't have any. Here, take 2 of mine and give one of them to that guy over there. Like this, it's no brainer. Because we know where happiness comes from. Right? And the way Swami Kriyananda put it, the few of them who are left, and there will be some of them, they don't know we're here. They really just don't, because they don't see us. I mean, literally, they don't see us. And they absolutely do not see that we have any magnetism, power. Because just the kind of power that we have is too subtle for their perception. Their perception is strutting around and being in charge of countries and sending armies here and there and, and then just look at me and then look at me and then look at me, just crazy, like children, except children with nuclear weapons and armies and huge amounts of money and all these different things. I make light of it because what else are we going to do? Okay, so we're here for 2 reasons. I'll speak for myself. I believe I'm speaking for many of you. Because 1, we're here because we see the future and we're creating it. And we're creating it. We're not yet creating it. We know we have a little bit. I have a school. We have a school in Palo Alto. We have a temple. We have this. We have a few things here. We have a room full of people. We have Unity Church. Lots of good things going on. But it's not our day yet. It's not our day to be the society, but the Yuga cycle promises, the uprising of the age. We are the future. And every time I see children or young adults, I think, wow, I mean, like, you were really born for this. I'm born to sort of say, have a good time, guys. Yeah, good. I told you what happened. Enjoy yourselves. But a lot of people are being born precisely because their most productive years are going to be rebuilding all of this. But the other reason we're here, I'll speak for myself, is I'm scared. Yeah, of course I'm scared. I'm not scared for myself as much. I have, over a number of years, I've learned not to be afraid of my own karma, which is how I would put it. Which is actually, and I'm going to give you a little riff here because this is a very important learning. Both of my parents died within 2 years of each other 20 years ago. And because of certain circumstances, even though I had left home quite early, I ended up being quite involved in the last years of their life. My mother had Parkinson's, which is a great teacher, a very hard teacher. God bless my mother toward the end of her life. My mother was a very sweet woman, but she didn't have a great deal of willpower. But she said like this, I hate to admit it, but this disease has been the making of me. And it was really true, because she fought against it, not in anger, but just she resisted. She just didn't collapse into it. And she had more than a decade of that. And quite honestly, she's going to have a better life next time, because all of her fine qualities, she'll be able to put more energy into her ideas. So was it a bad thing that she got sick? You see, that's a hard question, isn't it? If she hadn't gotten sick, if she just sailed through, would she have learned what she really, really needed to learn? Okay. And my dad took care of her for a long time, and then he took a little mental holiday. It was just a little bit of a strain with my mother. And so at a certain point, he just decided, I think I'm just going to go on vacation for a couple of years. So he just went on mental vacation, and totally sweet. He was just a sweetheart, but he just forgot what he was supposed to worry about. And he just got a little bit of a break. Okay, the end of all of this, and this is where I was talking about being afraid of your karma. I'm an executive type. I have a lot of willpower. I can organize. I'm an entrepreneur. I can make things happen. So I went down to get my parents' life in order. I mean, to the point of buying them containers for the refrigerator so we could keep, the leftovers really clear. I mean, my parents have lived, let me think, on their own. They're in their 80s. I left home when I was 18, and I'm coming in there like they can't tie their own shoes. And I thought I was helping. I'm not entirely stupid, so I gradually figured out that they didn't like it. But there was also something that came to me. I was not really trying to make their life better. I was trying to make my life better. Because they lived in Southern California. I lived in Northern California. I was going down to see them a couple of times a week. I mean, I was commuting on the airplane back and forth. Thank God there was enough money to do that, but we did that. And it was very inconvenient for me, and I was also very concerned. I just needed to get them in line like that. And they are my parents, meaning they know me, and they could tell that my apparently altruistic behavior was just not altruistic. It was only about me, because, and this is where I came to, and this is very important. And over many years, I have learned not to fear my own karma. Now, that doesn't mean when Divine Mother drops a karmic bomb on me that I say, oh, isn't this wonderful? I fall on the floor screaming and crying, or crawl into my bed and pull the covers up and just refuse to get out of bed until you can't just lie down and die, because you get bored. And you want to check your phone, it's just like, so eventually you move, you do something else. So it's not like I can sail through it without difficulty, but I'm not afraid of it. Because if it comes to me, first I know Divine Mother, if Divine Mother could teach me in a nicer, easier way, she would do that. If she's giving me a rough lesson, it's because she knows it's the only way that I'll learn it. So I might not like it. I might say to her, I think this is a rotten idea. But actually Jesus taught us in the Bible how to pray. Jesus says, let this cup pass from me. He has an opinion, and he expresses it. But then he says, thy will, not mine, be done. What do I know? And that's how we pray. You must be absolutely authentically honest, but then afterwards you have to concede that what do I know? You're the one who's in charge. So not rebelling against what comes is not quite the same as saying that I'm not affected by what comes. But I also know if God sends it to me, it's in the end it's going to be good for me, and no matter what happens, it will turn out to be of benefit. That doesn't mean everything is perfect and nobody's evil, because they are. Lots of people are evil. All these things are so. But I realized I did not respect my parents enough to believe that they could deal with their own karma. I was afraid of their karma for them. And they naturally, they could not have traced all this because they don't understand it this way, but they felt rightly insulted. And I was totally insulting them. And in the name of what? Compassion? You're such a puny, I have to worry about you all the time. You can't deal with your own life. It's up to me to protect you from your own destiny. Think about that. And think about how much of our panic about what goes on around us, it's twofold in two important ways. Is God in charge? Is there a divine power, a wise, loving, divine power that is in charge of this world, or is it just totally a random thing? And the other thing is, do you have a right to learn? Does anybody else have a right to learn? And you see how complicated it suddenly gets? And that doesn't mean that those people are good or everything they're doing is good. And that doesn't mean that you don't try to influence and bring light and bring understanding if you can. And sometimes love is very stern. It's not, people make a mistake. If they think it's spiritual, it means always to be nice. No, sometimes the way to be spiritual is to say, get out, stop. No, this will not happen. But that's quite different than being afraid. And I have a lot of fears. There you have it. And the greatest fear is other people suffering. When my mother, Parkinson's is a fierce teacher, let's just put it like that. And we all knew that at some point it would go to her brain and start her having seizures. So my mother started having seizures. And I can't picture this, I can't figure exactly how this happened, but somehow we were in the emergency room, or she had been taken to the emergency room. I arrived a little later. I'm not a very large person. My mother was smaller, and especially by then she was smaller. So she was just this tiny little lump under this sheet, and she'd had a seizure, and she was just resting like that, and she was unconscious or asleep. And in my mind, it was this great big room, and it was just her in the bed and me, but that's hard for me to picture how that really was, but maybe it was just the way I felt it. I can't point. In the temple, in Ananda Temple, we have all 5 of the masters, plus Swami's picture up there. Jesus, Babaji, Lahiri, Sri Yukteswar, as well as Yogananda. Big picture of Swami. I sat down and I called them all into the room. I called a board of directors meeting. And I just saw them like this, and I said, I've done a lot for you guys for a long time, and you owe me. You owe me. I pointed to my mom and I said, this is not an option. We are not going to do this. And 1 month later, she left her body. I had gone to Europe, and my sister calls me. I left on Sunday. On Monday, she had another seizure. My sister calls me on Tuesday morning. She said, Mom died this morning. I said, good for her. It was just like, hallelujah, you're done. You don't need to say any longer. And my dad was still alive, but he couldn't remember that she had died. She was just out shopping or something as far as he knew. So everything was pretty much okay. Good for her. She just, faced it and left. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Because of course everyone dies. There will be, if there's nuclear calamities, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people will die. But friends, go to Google and type in near-death experience and get a picture of what a non-event it is to die. And in fact, once they're on the other side and they're supposed to come back, it's, oh, please don't make me. It's just like we don't die. The body becomes uninhabitable for one reason or another. But what goes on is the energy pattern, the chakras. That's how the chapter book continues. You take off the body, but you don't take off yourself, because yourself is that energy pattern, and that will be you for eternity. That energy pattern will gradually refine and shift, but you'll always be that energy pattern. So we're here because it scares me to have to, I have a lot more to learn about trusting other people to face their karma, trusting Divine Mother to bring what she needs to whomever she needs to bring it. Now, there's another very important piece of this that Mother Mary and Padre Pio and Yogananda and Mother Mary of Fatima, Mother Mary of Medjugorje, they all say, they have all talked about these cataclysmic events, and they say there's only one reason why they're happening. Yogananda talks about the yugas. I don't know if Mother Mary has talked about Kali, Treta, and Satya, but she's talked about the same thing because it's a reality. Call it what you will. It exists. You can have 1,000 words for the same thing, but it's the rain or the thunder or the sky. So the reason it's happening is because, we have lost our way. We have become so atheistic. We have become so materialistic. We have become so, if I can get it for me, why do I care about you? And just so just so tiny. We've just disconnected ourselves from nature. I was driving through a part of your city. I was walking through parts of your city. And all cities are like this. And I said, I don't know if there's no zoning here, but you can go, you can change really fast. We had a 10-minute walk and we went through many different dimensions of reality in that 10-minute walk. And I was looking at a spot and I said to my friends, how did it get so ugly? How did, step by step, how did the natural world become as ugly as this? Because where we were was just ugly. I mean, I don't care. It's just is what it is. But that's just what it was. And how did we make a world where there is so much that is so dissonant to the human spirit? What to speak of dissonant to our love for God and our appreciation of nature and our attunement with higher realities and our humility before the infinite. But that's what's trying to happen. What's trying to happen now is we have to be reawakened to our need for God. And I'm just going to say God without a lot of apologies. I've been listening to people, qualify that, however you may define that, But that's also part of the problem. It's just that we just don't just say, God. I heard Oprah Winfrey, of all people, who's not, I don't have anything against her. She's an admirable woman. And she was using the word God. And she sort of said like that, God, the big man, you know who I'm talking about. Let's not quibble. We mean a greater reality of which we are a part, which is wise and loving and is what we should attune ourselves to. You can start with nature if you want. You can start anywhere you want. But you must end up there. I am interwoven. I am part of a greater reality, and we are all part of this. And we are not functioning like that. We are not functioning like that. And that's why there's going to be, and it's creating this dissonance. It's creating this magnetism that must fulfill itself. Swami said when Yogananda talked about this in 1950, he spoke on Sunday and it felt like it was going to happen on Monday. So I've known Swami since 1969. I was in close association with him from 1971 until he passed in 2013. And almost every year was going to be the year, starting in 1971, because of how Yogananda put it. Time is a little hard to say in prophecy. But the forces, and you see the forces. Listen to the music, my friends, so-called music. You know, it's just angry, without melody, just banging and hammering. You think that those kind of vibrations put out into the world over and over have no effect? You know, and the strutting politicians and the whole thing, and just what to speak of how we're treating Mother Nature. Just like we just don't remember. And as Swami put it, Mother Nature is slow to react. The earth is slow to react. But when she makes up her mind to act, nothing we do can stop her. But all of that is to bring us to an awareness of our own divinity and into a right relationship with the divine again. So if you're already in motion, this is not happening for you. And not happening in the sense that we have to be kicked into this awareness. Because if we're already moving, then it'll burn behind us, but not in the same way. Yogananda said, and none of us have been able to pin this one down, and he's not here to ask. He said that there will be terrible cataclysms, terrible economic situations, terrible international realities. About the U.S., he said, we'll have half as much money, but be much more happy. You know, I mean, what do we need with all that we have right now? But he also said, those who love God will be protected. Swami Kriyananda said, at what level, I wonder? You know, because everyone has to die. We can't be protected from dying. And we can't be protected from the opportunity to face our fears and learn. So what does that mean? What one of my friends, Davy, said, which I thought was, she interpreted it this way: we will never lose connection with that higher reality. We will be protected from despair. We will be protected from a feeling of abandonment. And so, what does it matter? Because in the end, that's all that we are, is just the energy within us, right? So I'm actually quite cheerful. I have a social media presence, I guess, whatever the words are. I have a friend, God bless her, Ishani, my angel friend Ishani, who manages all of that, and I don't really know, and she makes up the titles and so on. So two of the really humdingers that she got were, yes, it's going to get worse. And the other second one was, yes, it's going to get worse, part 2. Those are my current, the current top of the pile, whatever, however you measure these things. And it is odd, because it's not going to be fun, really. It's going to break our hearts in some really big ways. At the same time, God is love. Our nature is bliss. We have to grow. Why would we not want to grow? That you have to ask yourself, why would I not want to? Do I think I am the complete fulfillment of my own potential? Am I living at the apex of pure happiness, and no more greater happiness or freedom than I have is already mine? And if you can't answer that yes, and who could answer that yes, why would we not want to grow? And Swami, decades ago, gave a whole series of classes. He called it Building Spiritual Power Against Troubled Times. So that's what I'm really saying. Now is the time. Now is the time to take very seriously your own consciousness, and to ask yourself, how is this going to contribute to light in the world? And much more strongly than we have in the past, because we don't know how much more time we have left. We need to get with the program. Mother Mary in Medjugorje, who's been appearing to certain of those visionaries, some for every day for 30 years. You can't even, it's really hard to think. I saw a film once of this African girl who was having visions of the mother. And she was being filmed, and she was just there, and she was just talking, and then all of a sudden she could see Mother Mary in front of her. I don't even know what the film was. I wish I could find it again. But it was stunning to just see the look on her face from just being an ordinary nice girl to being in the presence of her. And Mary said in Medjugorje, she told people to do the rosary for 3 hours every day, pray every day. She's supporting her son's church, you know. But it doesn't matter what you do. But she also said, I believe, and this is how it was told to me, that she spoke of 10 cataclysmic things, but because enough people have been listening to her, now there are only 9. So I believe the force of destruction is too strong for us to stop it. But we can mitigate it, perhaps globally, but mitigate it within ourselves and the aura that as big as our aura is. So insofar as you care about anybody besides yourself, and the power of thought and spirit is much greater than matter. And only a tiny fraction of people on the planet ever are known by other people on the planet. But they also say so beautifully, God knows our name. But even more than that, you have no idea how powerful your commitment to truth is. It's much more powerful than their commitment to shadow. Because shadow is just blocking the light. But the final, what did God say at the very beginning? Let there be light. And that's what it all comes down to, live in the light. A friend of mine was very ill with cancer. She died of it. She said to Swami, what should I pray for? You know, should I pray to be healed? He said, pray to stay in the light. Because then if you're sick or you're well or you're in this world or the other world, you'll be just exactly where you wanted to be. She put this big silver carving made out of silver of the sun. She just put it where she could see it from her bed. So every time she opened her eyes, she saw the light in that sense. And you know, she died in grace because that's what will happen. So practice now. Practice when it's easier. Swami Kriyananda said to me, when I asked him, how do I know in a crisis what God wants of me? He said, in a crisis, you will go true to form. You will follow whatever pattern you have carved in your consciousness. So he said, if you want to know in a crisis how to respond, how to feel and to respond to God's will, you have to practice when it's easier, which has become a mantra of my life. There's no moment that is not important. Because not only are you radiating into the world, but you are carving a pattern, and you're building a magnetism in your chakras, which will be the guiding force when times get harder. So if we practice now, we'll be instruments of the light. And if we're instruments of the light, when we leave this planet, which we will sooner or later, maybe sooner, maybe later, maybe, as Swami said, we'll all go out in a big bomb, or else we'll dribble out over, a number of years. Once we're on the other side, it doesn't make a whit of difference. But who you are is what will matter at that point. I was just going to tell you a funny story, and it's a story with a point. Okay. In 2011 and 2012, some of the last years of Swami's life, we made a movie. A film, it's called Finding Happiness. You can find it on the internet. Very interestingly, we came up with the idea of finding happiness, and at the same time, thoughts are universal. And so about 3 other films came out with very similar titles all at the same time. So you have to look for the one that's us. And it was a docudrama, so to speak. It wasn't a documentary. But we had a fictional reporter who was coming to find out about about Ananda in general, primarily on the West Coast and our places there. And then she does this story and this whole thing. But everything that she finds, everybody she talks to is just us. And we all work together and presented all these different aspects. There's a beautiful film of Swami in it. Some of the only place where there is informal film, where it's not him just giving a class. So that's really a very nice part of it. And we hired a professional group from Los Angeles of real people and did the whole thing that way. So they were, because they were hired and because they were nice and because they really enjoyed Swami's company and they found us all extremely intriguing, they participated in the whole thing with a very positive attitude. What they said alone to each other, we don't know. But nonetheless, I have a few hints of it, but I'd rather not think. And then in some context, they did a focus group in Los Angeles with what they call the director's cut, I think, just to sort of get feedback as to what we needed to do. For reasons that I don't remember, I was the only one of the Ananda team that was able to go to Los Angeles for that event. So I'm there just witnessing it. It was really the publicity people that we'd hired who were doing it. The next morning, I meet everybody for coffee, and now I'm on their turf. They've been on my turf all this time. Now I'm on their turf, and we are LA's story big time. You know, just everybody's really like they are. And you know, there are a number of places in the film where we have this music, our music, so to speak, Swami's music, whatever you call it. And we're very enthusiastic about bright colors. So when our choir stands up to sing, they're all dressed in very bright colored clothes. And these are all really cheerful songs and the whole thing. It's slightly more staged than the way we do it, but only just by a quarter inch. It was really authentic. So I'm there with these people in Los Angeles, and they realize that nobody is listening. It's just me. I have nobody around that I have to please. And essentially they lean over and say, "Do you all really do that?" And I said, "You mean dress up in bright colors and sing happy songs? Yes, we do it all the time." But, you know, it's like, "Suffer little children to come unto me," is what Jesus said. And he didn't mean become stupid like children are, who just don't know anything from anything, really. They're adorable, but they're not wise just because they're innocent. Real wisdom is after you're not innocent, that you come back to it. Because that's what Jesus meant, like little children, not as little children, but like little children. And the other thing, and this is very subtle, but it's fascinating, everything about spiritual life is to come into the center, to come back from the periphery and come into the center. But because this world is so complicated, we think that the Creator must be even more complicated, where it's actually just the opposite. All of the dualities, all of the complexity just resolves into the one. So the closer you get to the center, the more simple it all becomes. You know, so we've sung these songs in many different venues all over, and everybody always starts out, you know, "All the world is my friend when I learn how to share my love." And this one is the one that really gets them. The first time I saw this done, some of you know Ram. Ram was a professional football player. He's 6'3". He's a black man with all that power. He's a little older now, and he was just out there on his tippy toes, and I thought, man, he can do it. Anybody can do it. But you know, but then we all just start doing that, don't we? And we forget that we shouldn't. And we've just forgotten what it really is just to be simple and joyful. And so all of that it's a real truth. And of course, there's many circumstances when you know, you meet people that you can't just say, "All the world is my friend." You know? Yogananda remarked about Gandhi that one of the reasons he was able to carry out that nonviolent satyagraha and free it, he said, is because the British are essentially gentlemen, and they have a sense of fairness. He said if he tried to practice that in other countries, they would have just killed him the first day. So there are times when you have to behave differently. But there are also times when, even if it's silently, this is the vibration that you really want to live in, because this is much more true. It's the eternal truth. And it gives you wisdom and power when you understand it properly. And that's why, to those lovely people in Los Angeles, yes, of course we do. What else would we do? Why would we wear black like all of you people are doing, and just sing awful songs about tragedy? Like, tell me, why would I do that? We just get confused, okay? I freely state that I have fear, but I also talk about living in the light. How do those two things exist simultaneously? You see, this is the complexity of karma, is that we're not this like super organized, we're not all living in one little package and the little package just moves up the corridor. We are all these disparate things at the same time. The chakras represent all different vibrations, and until we are completely finished, we have vortices in different sections, and those vortices play against each other as a magnetic force. And so as we gradually add more energy to a higher and more refined state of realization, it plays against the resistance to that. And it's a completely magnetic relationship. The more I meditate, the more I affirm spirituality, the more I pay attention to my own experiences, the more I keep repeating these words over and over to all of you, the more I build energy in a more refined way. So then it takes more. It has to be a stronger vortex to pull me out of that. And not only does the one that I'm aspiring to become get stronger and stronger, I'm not adding energy to the lesser understanding, and gradually I absorb the energy that has been trapped in a lower understanding into the higher understanding. This is why people will say, don't worry about anything, just meditate, and everything in your life will change. Because if you are meditating in such a way that you are actually affecting the chakras properly, and I have to put that caveat in there, then if you just keep magnetizing energy at the spiritual eye, all the other vrittis of energy will gradually be converted into this higher reality. In the meantime, on my good days, I'm fine. And then when energy is lower or the challenge is greater. See, I'm at the point in my life where I can ride pretty even-mindedly through lots of things that used to upset me. But then what happens, of course, is once you can lift the weights on the machine, Divine Mother puts another weight on it. So, just a very interesting example. I'm not consciously aware of being afraid of death. I've been with people who've died. I've been thinking about this since I was really quite young. I have a complete conviction that it's fine. I'm on the freeway. It looks like somebody's going to ram into me, and I feel myself reacting. And then I think, why am I reacting? I have a friend. He happens to be a very big man, but he's incredibly centered in himself. And by a very complicated series of situations, I guess I have to give you the whole thing. Ananda took ownership of an apartment complex that was a little bit seedy, because that's how we could afford it. And then they were moving the existing tenants out, and some of them were very rough characters, active drug dealers and people who rented the rooms by the hour. We'll just leave it like that, And so he was the manager who was making all this happen, and this man who was being evicted was very mad. And he walked in and put a loaded gun at my friend's chest. And he said, "Go ahead and shoot. You're still going to be evicted." And I thought, oh, Lord, please, give me that much courage. And of course, he didn't shoot. He wouldn't, actually, technically, he wouldn't have been evicted. He would have been taken to prison. So, but he wouldn't have been able to stay in his apartment. But that's what I aspire to. And I've seen it in my peers. But in the meantime, last point. Swami Kriyananda put it this way. If you're going to judge yourself, and then he said, which I don't recommend, he said, do not judge yourself by what you are now. Evaluate yourself for what you aspire to become, because there is no fixed moment. It's all an energy pattern. And every single thought you're having is mutating that energy pattern. So what you are building is a much clearer definition of who you are, because by the time it's here, it's over. And so that's how I feel about it. That's why I can say it without feeling like a hypocrite. And I also do say that because people have a very false idea of what it is to be spiritual. I'm myself, and now I'm spiritual. Like, no such luck, honey. That's just not a... And you need stamina, you need realism, you need honesty, you need humility, and perseverance. But I mean, all I'd have to do is, wow, am I ever different than I used to be? And the direction is where I'm trying to go. So if I'm not all the way there yet, what else would I do? That's where I want to go. Okay? Certainly, it's a very good question. Okay, do we have another one? The question was, did Kriyananda have a favorite memory of Yogananda? Actually, here's the real better answer to that. There was no past in his relationship with Yogananda. He wrote 3 different books about his time with Yogananda. His autobiography called The New Path, and another really wonderful book called Conversations with Yogananda. Really marvelous, just all sorts of things. So he tells us a lot. But his relationship with Master, as he called him, was in the moment at all times, because the mere fact that when a Master leaves his body, he doesn't go away. Death, time, space, nothing means nothing. And we take it for granted because Christianity is just so solid and everybody knows about it in the West. Jesus appears to the saints all the time, and we just think that's fine. But it's not just Jesus who appears. It's a God-realized Master is completely unlimited by anything. And so Swamiji made us a particular point of wanting us to understand, because he led this community of those of us who felt ourselves to be disciples of Yogananda. He was the only one who'd ever met him. So it would be extremely easy, would have been extremely easy for him to make us feel like he was the lucky one and we were just poor also rans, and maybe we could take the crumbs. But if he had done that, what would we have done with that? So it was not only a fact, it was also appropriate that he never made us feel ever that the fact that we were never with Yogananda when he was in the body was the slightest obstacle to being able to be inwardly in tune with him. And Swamiji himself lived that way. He did not live in the years that I was with him. If only I could. He was conscious of that. He did say to me once at the end of his life, and I mean, he probably said it to others, but I was the only one there at the moment. He said, I wish I could be with Master now, knowing what I know. He said, because I was so young. He was from the age of 22 to 26 is when he was with him. And now he's talking to me when he's 84 or something like that. If I could be with him now, I would be able to draw so much more. My response was, well, one should always be able to say that, don't you think? And I certainly look back on, I was with Swami for 45 years in very close association. But oh my, did I ever miss the point a lot of the time. So I often think, if only I had listened. But when it's odd, just now that I'm saying this, people sometimes ask me, what's your favorite memory of Swami? Of course, I had a lot of years. I don't have one, because it's not a fixed reality. It's not a fixed point that I would hold on to. It's my relationship with him has always been, from the first time I met him, a flow of energy. And it's tuning into this flow of energy, which is going where I want to go in the way that I want to go, and is always focused in the right direction. And so the friendship has a personal element to it. It has to, but that isn't the definition of it. The definition is, if you think about it, I'm not a particularly good singer. I'm not horrid. I can sing in a choir if somebody is standing next to me who knows how to do it. And when you're singing in a choir like that, you're just adding your voice to the music that's coming through. And basically, that's what a master is. He's a melody that's coming through. That's why we talk about attunement. And so there's no way to say this is my favorite memory. My favorite memory is the fact that that he exists, and that I came to know him, and that if I listen and sing in harmony with his vibration, everything in my life gets better and better. So that was a sense. In fact, Swami himself said, when people ask me for a specific story now, he said, I can't conjure it up. He said, it'll occur to me when I'm trying to make a point, and I'll use something that happened to illustrate the point. But he could not picture Master just as a personal experience, because it didn't exist for him. Thank you for asking that question. I never actually thought it through like that. And I never thought why I can't answer the question. I've made up answers, but the things I come up with are just silly, and I can hear that they're silly. But that's why, because it doesn't exist in the past. It's not personified by that experience. Okay, who else wants to go after that one? Oh, I'll take one more if there is one, and then we'll call it a night. Is there one more? Okay. Right, what was my takeaway from all the travel? Yeah. Very simple, it's really simple. I started out pessimistic, and I have become very optimistic, because there is a huge positive force everywhere, every country. And I've been to South Africa, to Japan, to Estonia, to Latvia, to Finland, and then the obvious places like Spain and Germany and France. Everywhere we go, there are a lot of people. And of course, I travel in a rarefied atmosphere, but still, there's a lot of people who know who are on the right side of the light, and are active, dedicated, inspired people who are really bringing light into this world. And you go places and you can buy plant milk and you can buy plant yogurt everywhere. And you can throw a pebble and hit 5 vegan restaurants, just everywhere. We had the vegan restaurant in the last place, Lithuania. This huge, beautiful vegan restaurant. Now, of course, I don't mean to just be a chauvinistic Californian, which I am. But anyway. But the fact of the matter is, I've been in this for so long, I've seen the world change. And just the presence of vegan restaurants, which is a very interesting thought, and the presence of yoga studios, and the common reference to the sutras, it's just like the light is really expanding. It's just not being advertised, because the barbarians are in charge of the public picture. And so I'm very optimistic. I'm not optimistic about that it's not going to be a tough transition, but I'm extremely optimistic about the presence of light. We have allies everywhere, trust me, and we're going to have so much fun. Okay, I think that's a good ending point if I ever heard one.